So let's look at the next bit, the customers. So we said customers are a lifeline, and we have internal and external customers. Who are your internal customers?
Your staff.
Okay, your staff. Who else are your internal customers?
Suppliers.
Your suppliers. Good. Who else?
Stakeholders.
Stakeholders. Okay. What do we mean by internal customers?
People that are already connected to the business.
Yeah, basically people within the organisation or connected to the organisation in order to help run that organisation, if you like, yeah. So who are the external customers?
Yes.
Your guests, yeah. And what tends to happen is the focus is always on the external customer, because we think, okay, the external customer, they're coming here, they're paying us money, we need to look after them. And that's absolutely right. However, you should still be looking after your internal customer with exactly the same respect and courtesy that you do to the external customer. So who here has experienced or heard of some of the internal disputes that might happen within a hotel? So for example, between the kitchen or the restaurant, or between housekeeping and reception. Yeah? Relates to what I'm talking about. So, you know, housekeeping, reception, kitchen, restaurant, they are all your internal customers. So they still need to be treated with the same respect. They still need the same level of service as you're giving to your external customer. Yeah? And that's one of the things, unfortunately, we tend to forget. We think, oh, it's the internal customer. We don't even think of the internal customer. We think, someone I work with, it doesn't really matter if I'm rude to them. Well, actually, it does matter if you're rude to them. You know, you're not going to be rude to your paying guest. Why are you going to be rude to your colleague in another department? Same principle applies. So all your customers should be treated with the same respect and courtesy, with consistent service being delivered throughout. And again, that's where the flaws in the systems procedures come up, because you're not being consistent with your departments. Yeah? You may be consistent in front of your customer, but if you're not consistent behind the scenes with your other colleagues, that's where it's all going to go pear-shaped, if you like. So let's look at our internal customers. We've said the supplier is an example of your internal customer. So you need to think about how you source your suppliers. And the key things you need to be thinking about when you source your suppliers is the quality, the price, the consistency, and the reputation of your supplier. You want to have a supplier where you have a very good relationship with them. So maybe you have a last minute function and you need to put a last minute order in. If you've got a very good relationship with your supplier, they'll be able to bend over backwards and get that order to you. Yeah? If you haven't got a very good relationship, they'll probably say, I can't do it. And you're running around going down the local supermarket or something, which then means your consistency and your quality has just gone totally out the window, as has your costs. Yeah. So in order to source your suppliers, you need to go into trade shows to be kept up to date with what's going on. There are loads and loads of different suppliers out there now. There are loads and loads of different trade shows out there now. Yeah. Which is good and it's bad, because it means you have a lot of choice, but also means sometimes you have too much choice. So it's working out what's the best supplier for your needs. So how often do you change suppliers? Do you know here how often the suppliers are looked at and how often they're changed? Okay. Do you know why you change suppliers? Just out of interest? Price.
More expensive.
Yeah. Okay. But then you think about how much you're charging your customers. So we've said you're changing your toiletry supplier because obviously white company is cheaper than Morton Brown, which is absolutely fine, and that makes good business sense. But then are you thinking also about your costs and how much you charge as well? Pay. We said the other type of internal customer, broadly speaking, is your staff. And staff came up as one of the values that we looked at earlier. So if you need to look after your staff, the way you do this is to actually use your company values to recruit the staff. Okay? So whatever your company values are, that you've decided upon, that needs to be part of your recruitment process. Why do you think I say that?
When you're interviewing, you can ask them what their expectations are and what their beliefs are as well.
Okay.
So if they match, then you probably know
Good.
that this is the right person to hire for the job.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they need to deal with the values of your business.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's just have a look at what we have here. For example. So if okay, so let's look at the quality one. So quality was one of our values that we're going to be using. In an interview situation, how could you find out if the person you're interviewing also values quality like you value quality?
Maybe ask them what they think 5-star service is.
Okay.
About what?
What 5-star services? How they, what they believe 5-star services? Yeah. Good. What other sorts of things could you do?
Give them a scenario or something.
Good. Yeah. You give them a scenario and ask what they would do in that situation. Once you've done your interview process around your values and you've seen that there's a match between your values and the person's values, and obviously they know how to do the job and they are the right person for the job, then it's very important that you induct them. When should induction take place? When does the induction process start? So some people said before they start.
So after they've been hired,
Okay, you're almost there.
but before they, so at the period after they've been hired, but before signing a contract to formalise the job. I don't know.
Almost, not quite. So say they've been interviewed, you offer them the job, yeah, you have a start date, yeah? The formal induction should start on the start date, okay? But, as some of you said, induction starts before they start. The reason it will start before is because, I think you mentioned about setting expectations. You should be sending them information. Okay, this is what to expect on your first day, yeah? So they know what's going to happen. And that first day should be the formal induction. It might be off-site, it might be on the hotel premise, that's absolutely fine, depends on the size of your hotel. But it's got to be on the first day. Why has it got to be on the first day? Sorry?
Won't know what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, they won't know what they're doing. There's no point, say you're hiring a receptionist and day one put them straight on reception. Because now your consistency value's going out the window, your quality value's going out the window, your training value's going out the window. You haven't done any of that. Yeah? So if you're keeping some of these values in there, then it has to be day one, you start that training. The formal induction is part of the training process. Yeah? But to welcome them, you send them all the information before what you're going to expect on this day and what is going to happen. Yeah? How long does inductions take?
As long as needed. Depend the type of job.
Day.
No.
Ouch.
A few
Yes,
days.
for us, that's why we.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Or does it depend on if they've done the job before?
Think about your consistency, your training and quality.
Yeah.
Month. How do you know if someone's competent in their job? How long does it take for someone to be fully competent in their job role?
3 months.
3 months, yeah? Why is the probation period 3 months?
To see if they're capable
See if
of
they're
doing
capable of doing the job, yeah? So your induction period is actually 3 months. From day one through to the end of that, and that probation period is actually still part of the induction process. This is after your formal induction, you're doing your on-the-job training. You're checking and they know how to do the job, yeah? So, you know, if people say, oh yeah, induction's 1 day or half a day or whatever, you're not going to get very good training. That means you've got half a day with someone talking about the company and then you're on reception checking people in. But you don't know how to check them in because you don't know the systems necessarily. Yeah. So you need to train them so they're competent in their role and ensure consistency in your standards that you've set. You need to appraise them so they know that they can do things well, and if they're not doing things well, how they improve. How does appraisal work?
It's a meeting with the head of department or supervisor to see how you've been doing for the last year, 6 months, depending how often it is, and to give you feedback.
Okay, when would the first appraisal be?
After the 3 months, maybe?
after 6 weeks.
It depends.
Less than 6 weeks. Why do I say less than 6 weeks? The first appraisal, like a mini appraisal, will be less than 6 weeks.
It's quite a long time to because you just started, you want to know how you're getting on, and it's quite a long time to leave someone without giving that information.
Absolutely. So for a new starter, they need to have feedback on how they're doing. You want to make sure they're welcome, you want to make sure they stay with you, you've got to look after them. If you don't talk to them for 6 weeks and say, oh, how are you getting on? They're like, oh, now you're interested. They've probably left at that point if you haven't been looking after them, yeah? So a new starter, you need to look after them, you need to nurture them. So within the first 2 weeks, you should be having like a little job chat with them. So really informal sit down, how are you getting on? Anything you're not sure about? Those sorts of things, yeah? Then probably just before the probation period's up, for that first 3 months, you'd have a more formal sit down with them and find out how they're getting on. What happens at that point?
You decide if this is the right person to do the job.
Absolutely. So that's your crunch point on whether, yeah, you are the correct person, you're doing really, really well, you know, and they're going to stay, or actually this really isn't working out. And that's your time to say goodbye. And the biggest mistakes a lot of hotels make is they say, 3 months, you think he's got, he hasn't quite got it. He's almost, I can see potential, but he hasn't quite got it. We'll extend it another month. We'll extend it another month. We'll extend it another month. What's happening there?
Compromising.
Yeah, you've compromised your values. Your values have gone out the window.
Doesn't the person still feel confident either?
Yeah, the person obviously isn't, they're not confident or competent in what they're doing. How's that going to affect the rest of the team? Unsettled, yeah. You've got a member of staff who's not really, hasn't quite got it, they're probably still making mistakes, and the rest of the team are going to have to carry them, yeah. That 3-month probation period, if they're not working out, just hold your hands up, well, not working out, get rid of them, yeah. Yeah, it may sound harsh, I get this all the time, really? But if you don't get rid of them, you're going to carry a very weak member of staff who will affect the morale of your team. It will then later on be harder for you to maintain your standards because they're operating at a lower standard than everyone else, and you're going to just be giving yourself bigger and bigger problems.
Could you not find something more suitable for that individual? So say if they were in a role that wasn't particularly, well for them, we get something that's suitable for them, you'd still not disregard them.
Only if you've got a role available, yeah, and you'd have to go through the whole process again. Yeah. But to be honest, then what you need to be looking at is that you've actually recruited into the wrong role in the first place. Yeah. Okay, and then if you have a regular member of staff, then you'd have a 6-monthly and then annual appraisal. And those appraisals will get more in depth, a lot more formal. And again, they'd be based around the values. Like you did when you did your recruitment, your appraisals should also be based around those values. So your member of staff, you're able to demonstrate how they've been using those values in everything they do. Yeah. You've got to reward them. How would you reward your staff? Possibly a bonus.
Responsibility.
Could be with responsibility. Good.
Feedback.
Feedback.
Further training.
Further training. So development.
Yeah, for themselves.
Yeah. Other opportunities. Okay, so there's various different ways you could reward them. Normally things like giving them more responsibility, delegating tasks to them. That normally works better than just giving a bonus. Why do you think I say that?
So work harder.
Sorry?
They'll work harder.
They will work harder? Yeah?
Sustainable, so you can work long term. Not
Yeah.
just put monetary value.
Absolutely. Yeah. Believe it or not, money is not a motivator for everyone. Yeah. People initially think it is, but it's not. People actually are more motivated if they're rewarded through praise, recognition, and being developed. So you need to recognise and celebrate success. How do you do that with your staff?
I would like staff member of the month.
Okay, so you might have employee of the month. Yeah. Do you have that here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at the reviews that you have, yeah, customers might name you. You could actively ask your customers to name people who have given outstanding service, that sort of stuff. So if you've got comment cards and things like that, you might have on there, is there a member of staff that, you know, sort of outshone everyone else with a red name, that person, those sorts of things, yeah. But it's really important that you recognise and celebrate the successes of your teams. And it could even be something like someone's been on a training course and they've got a certificate for that. Yeah, making a bit of a deal about that, those sorts of things. Then looking at our external customers, then we need to look at surprising and delighting our guests. So let's just look at this. What you're doing your 2s and 3s is answer these questions. First of all, work out a basic guest need. Just put down a very simple example of what that might be. Work out a basic guest expectation. Then work out how would you exceed that expectation. And then think, what else could you do to ensure you're remembered for all the right reasons? As we go down the list, it gets slightly harder. The first 2 should be very easy, and then you might have to think a little bit harder for the last 2. So again, your 2s and 3s. See what you come up with. What is a basic guest need?
Eating, sleep.
Okay, eating and sleeping. So, if you had to describe a basic guest need, what is it? If you had to describe it in a sentence, what is it? So examples are eating, sleeping.
Comfortable.
Warm.
They're examples. They're coming on to expectations. How would you describe a need in a sentence? So the examples are eating, sleeping. Okay, good. A basic requirement that is what?
That is
Necessary or essential? Good. A basic requirement that is essential. That's basically what the basic need is. Yeah? So our examples are eating and sleeping. So what would the expectation be from the eating and sleeping, from the need?
We put a variety of nutritious dishes on the menu,
Okay.
catering for dietary requirements.
Okay. Anyone else? Comfortable room. Okay. Good. So how would you describe an expectation in a sentence?
Meeting the quality and the service.
Sorry, say that again.
Meeting the quality and the service.
Meeting the quality and the service. Okay, possibly.
it's what they expect when they come there.
Okay, keep going. So what's another word for expectation?
Requirement.
Meeting the needs of the customer.
Okay, so you've got one customer who comes in, never ever stayed in a 4-star hotel. What would their expectations be?
They might not have any. Well, they will have some, but they won't really know.
Okay.
They'll have sort of imagined it.
Okay. What would the expectations be of someone who regularly stays at 4-star hotels all the time?
They'll know what they're going to get and what they.
Pretty much the AA report.
So what's an expectation?
So it's just
What you're paying for, like the basic.
What you envision you're going to receive.
Okay. So it's a personal perception. Of that service requirement. So someone who stayed at a 4-star hotel is going to have different expectations to someone who hasn't stayed at a 4-star hotel. Yeah, it depends what experiences they've had. It depends if they've looked at your website, if they've researched, if people have told them about it, if they've looked at TripAdvisor, etc., etc. Yeah, that personal perception or that expectation is going to differ. So the difficulty that we have is we know what the need is. That's very easy, and that's why we have a hotel. Yeah, but we don't necessarily know what the individual expectations are. Yeah, we can have a bit of an idea, but different guests have different expectations. So if we want to meet and exceed the expectations, what have we got to do? How could you meet and exceed the expectation?
The extra mile.
How are you going to go the extra mile?
If they ask for something, you do a little bit extra that they were expecting.
So what have you got to do to be able to do that?
understand their perception and also exceed it.
So in order to exceed it, you need to understand and listen to your guests' needs and expectations. Because they will tell you, but not necessarily directly. Yeah? How else can you get out from them what their expectations are so you can then exceed it?
Sort of linked to that, you said they might not tell you directly, so like anticipating.
Okay?
So you
Yeah.
anticipate what they might want.
Okay. What do you got to be careful about anticipating?
That you don't anticipate too much.
Yeah. So you don't want to assume in case you get it wrong.
No, exactly, yeah.
Yeah?
But if you know your guests properly and you know in your experience what
Okay.
you do.
So
then
if it's a
you
regular
realise
guest,
that-
it's going to be easy to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got a regular guest, you know, the easy things is you know what table they like in the restaurant, you know what their favourite drink is. So when they come into dinner, you can have the drink ready on the table.
Mm.
Those sorts of things. Yeah, that's how you can anticipate for a regular guest. And by doing that, you'd exceed their expectation.
Sort of.
What are you going to do to be remembered then?
Emails.
What about emails?
Send them emails on updates and deals that they might have. And
Okay. How many
Or
emails
events.
does a normal person get a day? How many emails get deleted?
Exceed their expectations and make an impact.
Possibly. You do want to make an impact.
So
Maybe not.
What were you going to say?
create a memory from what they've done.
Good. Create a memory. Remember earlier on I said it's product plus service equals experience. That's going to create the memory for them. Yeah? So by exceeding expectations, you then need to do something that's going to create a memory, make an impact on that guest. How do you make the biggest impact?
Exceed their expectation.
Yeah, how would you do? Not as in a specific example, but generally, what would you have to do? So it all changes depending on the guest and the situation. What would
Offer
you
them
have
something
to
that they haven't looked at before, maybe.
Meet their needs.
Anticipating the needs or
Notice what they want before they actually say it.
Okay, good. Notice what they want before they actually say it.
Consistency. So if you found out what they like or what they want and everything, you'll let everyone know so that it's consistent throughout the hotel or department.
Okay, there. Your way of doing it, yeah. So you need to be very good at communicating. Yeah. To make the biggest impact, you do the smallest thing. It's normally the smallest gesture that actually has the biggest impact. Yeah. Because people remember those small things. And it could be anything as basic as using the guest name, remembering who they are from one state to the next. Yeah. And before they've introduced themselves, say, "Oh, welcome back, Mr. Brown," or whoever it is. Yeah. So you think, "Oh God, I remember it." Or you pick up something in the conversation that they talked about last time they were here. Yeah. Maybe they went to a football match or something. And you asked how their favourite team was doing, or whatever it is. Yeah. Little things like that. Think, "Oh right, yeah." Being remembered is not necessarily about making massive gestures. It's not necessarily spending lots of money on your guests. That's what people think. Oh, we've got to do something really big and really grand. The biggest impact is when you do something that actually comes genuinely from you, from the heart, on the spot, and it just happens. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. When I used to work for Hilton, we used to do lots of incentives and things for our staff, and we'd had things what were called Hilton moments, and it's like, what have you done to create a moment for the guest that's memorable for them? What did you do? The tiniest thing, what did you do? And the one that I always remember, it was from the housekeeping department. Basically, what happened, there was a family staying in the hotel, and so it's a couple and they had a little girl, and the little girl had a teddy bear. So what housekeeping used to do is every time they cleaned and serviced the room, they'd actually tuck the teddy bear in the bed. Okay? So it's tiny, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't take any time for housekeeping staff to do that. And it's just a little thing they did, and the reason it came about is because one of the housekeeping staff had a child of her own, and she does that for her child anyway, so I teddy bear, put it in the bed. So what that means is actually when the family come back, the child sees teddy bears in the bed, teddy bears being looked after, happy child, have a happy child, you've got happy parents. Yeah? So that's one tiny thing they did, but then actually kind of turned into a slightly bigger thing, and they left, they checked out, and the child forgot her teddy bear and left the teddy bear behind. So normally what happens, you know, housekeeping finds teddy bear, lost property, and it gets chucked in there and no one thinks about it. But what the housekeeping team did was they actually rang up the parents and they said, oh, we've got your teddy bear, your child's obviously left it here. But rather than saying, you know, you're going to come back and collect it, they said, we'll send it out to you, don't worry about it, we'll send it out to you. So obviously they checked the details, packaged him up, and then they sent him in the post. I think, oh, no big deal about that. But the other tiny little thing they did, which had a massive impact on this family, is they wrote on the parcel, dear Mr. Postman, please look after this teddy bear and safely deliver it to, and then put the girl's name and address on it. So then when the girl gets the parcel from the postman, she can see, you know, he's been looked after. It's not just chucked in a box, chucked in the post, but there's a message for the postman to look after the teddy bear's safe. Yeah? So it's very, very small, but it has a big impact. And then that family always think, oh yeah, I'm going to stay at Hilton. Yeah? They look after us, they looked after my child, they look after the teddy bear, whatever it is. And again, it may seem really silly, but it's little things like that, the genuine little touches that come from the heart that actually have the biggest impact on your guest. That is how you're going to create those moments. That's how you're going to create being remembered for the right reasons. Yeah.